steel, iron, and cybernetic circuits. So Franco Bulian, our Catas director, who has, we work together to select the topics of today's agenda. Franco Bulian, your floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Luca. Today we're going to talk about LCA, but even more about sustainability. No product can land on the market, including a machine to produce that product, unless you have declared that the product is sustainable. We're all aware that whenever we open any newspaper, topics and themes addressing sustainability is always present. Sustainable holidays, sustainable food. So as Catas, we gave some thoughts to what it actually means to declare that a product or a machine is sustainable. Catas is a workshop, is a laboratory, and so what we're good at is measuring. And so we decided to rely on some friends, good friends, that are very much familiar with these topics, like Anna Bortoluzzi. And so we thought about finding to start measuring sustainability. So whenever I buy a mobile phone, a car, a chair that is declared as sustainable, then this sustainability statement must be based on a measurement. What are the measures, the principles upon which this statement is made? We need to find measurable objectives. So the LCA assessment is not a statement, it's not a declaration, it's just a way to measure how much a product impacts on environment. And I'm sure that Anna Bortoluzzi and Annamaria Franz will be able to explain this better than I do. Catas is good at doing this, and so in the light of the sustainability trend, we decided to find a way on how to measure environmental impact and sustainability as a measurement. So I'll give the floor to Ms. Bortoluzzi, and I would like to ask you to introduce yourself first of all. So yes, let me introduce myself. I'm very glad to do that. I'm the scientific director of Mapping LCA. Mapping LCA is a structure that was set up by process and materials specialists. There are engineers, material technologists, material chemistry technologists, and we've created this cooperation with universities, Milano and another university, but also some companies. So we also have Catas engineers in our team. What is the purpose of Mapping LCA? The purpose is to establish a common basis to understand the topic. The first key problem is, okay, sustainability. What is sustainability? This term is pulled this way, the other way. It's a short blanket and it covers very little. And there is a risk of exploiting this word too much because we don't really know what we talk about. So Catas kindly asked me to introduce this topic, and I have prepared a presentation of slides for an entry-level sustainability person. So there is a rational thread behind this basis that I'm going to present. So these slides are meant to serve as guidelines, not to get lost in the concept and definition of what sustainability is. Let me see if I can show you my slides. Here they are. So whoever is interested in diving into this topic can use these slides. The LCA approach starts from thinking, life cycle thinking. That's a very easy thread of thought. Any product or any activity has an environmental impact. They create a variation in the environment, typically environmental damage. Not so much in the light of them being marketed, but in the light of where they come from, extraction of raw materials, transportations, processes they are subjected to. It's a sort of a budget. So the environmental blueprint, which also becomes economic and social blueprint, is supported by a life cycle thinking. Life cycle doesn't only imply circular economy, which is indeed a virtuous approach, but life cycle here means to be able to integrate all the path leading to the production of a product or an asset in its entirety, and considering it its entirety as a budget. So the underlying principle is the life cycle thinking. So my reference documents were extracted from the United Nations. They valuable documents. The United Nations has an entire department which has been working on this very aspect for the past dozens of years. So this is something that helps the industry improve and mature. So whoever deals with machines, they need to understand they are at the middle, at the heart of the life cycle. If the life cycle starts at extraction of raw materials to marketing a wood board and building the machine to deliver that product, is still part of the budget of the life cycle of that wood panel or board. And they account for a certain portion or percentage. I think Catas' efforts are headed towards institutionalizing some awards, like the LCA award, which is going to be awarded this time for the first time. So Catas' challenge is this one. So if we need to start operating according to life cycle thinking, we need to establish how much machines contribute to the life cycle. So a wood board, a wood panel doesn't come out on the market just naturally per se. So it needs to be produced with machines. So there is a major contribution by the machines part of the process. I would like to invite you to really read through all these slides, which really serve as guidelines. And this is another key message to be transferred. So the parameters of the so-called green economy, which is another topic that is very much discussed, we need to be clear on what we are talking about. So behind words, behind sentences that everybody is using, let's just establish the concept. So the 10 parameters underpinning green economy imply economic, social, and innovation. So these are the parameters that we have used. These are the parameters which we have used to deliver a sustainability assessment within the framework of the LCA award. These are the terms that all nations are using in terms of sustainability. What we forget nowadays is that there is a discipline, a real discipline, that performs measures and that represents the basis of sustainability. When we speak about life cycle thinking, this is what we refer to. Hopefully this is going to be helpful. So there is a product design, raw materials, manufacturing, distribution, utilization, and end of life. So this is what I mean by life cycle thinking. We can measure the life cycle. We have 40 years of calculation methodology that will help us determine a measure. But even if we don't identify a measure, which is something Catas will dwell on later on, well, life cycle thinking and getting into this mindset already means thinking sustainably. This means that whenever we consume any good, any asset, we already are aware of the social, economic, and environmental value behind that asset. So the textile and fashion industry has been working a lot on that, because they were in the eyes of everybody. Disposable fashion kills, and this was one of their slogans. So disposable fashion items kill. The non-profit organizations are really fighting hard against this concept. And so it's good for everyone to think in terms of a life cycle thinking. And it's not just a game, it's not just a buzzword. There is a very structured scientific discipline behind it, which we sometimes ignore. This is the life cycle for the environmental part of the process. Catas is going to present the measurement methodology schemes. There is a calculation structure, environmental parameters, impact categories, and damage. What you see in the right part of the slide with all the arrows, this is the calculation model used by Catas. This is represented graphically. So we account for human health damage, impoverishment of resources, and quality or damage to ecosystems or to Earth. So I would say that the calculations model is based on these flows and arrows. Then we quantify a value, and as Mr. Bulian said earlier on, the life cycle assessment is a measurement that exists regardless of regulations. However, the regulatory agencies may think that a certain discipline is mature enough to be characterized and controlled by standards, by norms, because it represents a value that identifies the state of the art. ISO identified the state of the art of the LCA calculations, not just the methodology, but the score. So if we go by the right methodology, and if we calculate by the right methodology, we will have a benefit, we will have a plus. And if you comply through these calculations, you will have then the plus certification. ISO boards recognize that this discipline has established itself, and so it represents indeed an international state of the art. And so it is fair to be able to certify these activities. This is some further food for thought. Life cycle is managed within organizations that set up IT systems to collect data and information about life cycle have these life cycle management schemes. Whoever is interested in diving into this topic can find in-depth information at the links attached here. So we have organizations, and so let me tell this, the European Commission has ruled that European companies will have to put in place two-level organizations. So life cycle to deliver a label, a market label that is identifiable by the consumer, and an intra-company life cycle management system. Management is necessary in order to improve. Measurement is necessary to improve. Unless you measure, you cannot improve. So life cycle within an organization serves the purpose of pushing companies to improve continuously year by year and diminish their environmental blueprint. And let me just get to the end of my contribution. each slide of this presentation is a component, an element of this structured discipline. Once again, the United Nations have approached the calculations methodologies. We have one methodology for environmental LCA. Then we have life cycle costing methodology. You need to strike a balance between these two. On the one hand, you're producing an increasingly more sustainable product from an economic point of view, but on the other hand, is less environmentally sustainable. Is this right? Is this fair? I can just give you a practical example. Jeans manufacturers are all stepping back from how they used to produce. They used to produce jeans with permanganate substances which poisoned the world. NGOs such as WWF ran a campaign which damaged and smeared the reputation of these companies, and they leveraged on developing countries that were exploited and suffered pollution. And now there is the so-called reshoring. So Americans only want to wear Italian-made jeans without permanganate, without exploitation of people. And what you see just in front of you right now is a very powerful tool. This is a calculations models. This is not greenwashing. These are calculations models that establish a balance between the various factors. We have software-based calculations model. There are established software that are able to balance all these factors. So, and we've been striving for the past 40 years to establish this discipline. And I trust and I'm confident that Catas may really disseminate this knowledge in the various manufacturing pipelines. Let me just remind you of what greenwashing is. Please avoid greenwashing because 95% of whatever surrounds us, and this is confirmed by statistical data, 90% of what surrounds us is indeed greenwashing. So LCA allows me to communicate and certify. We have environmental labels. And LCA is a type 3 type of label based on a specific ISO standard. Circular economy is no longer a mystery. It revolves around objective calculations models, objective measures, and it is oriented to managing performance improvement. It is exactly the contrary of a linear economy model, which implies waste of resources and energy. We are committed to educating new generations, and let's look at where it all started. You can see the references of the documents here and read it through. This is the stance taken by the United Nations, the European Commission, and the Circular Economy Action Plan is based on what I've just communicated to you. So please be careful. We're all talking about things we are not aware of, but we are supposed to be knowledgeable about them because European and worldwide political choices are made with a structured awareness, which is based on a discipline which we still think, which we still ignore, but we like to talk about or use its terminology. Also is working worldwide on this topic in an uncompared manner, and this is the history of our panel of experts, and of course we are available to whoever wants to dive into this topic and obtain in-depth information. Hopefully I was short enough. Thank you for your attention. Hopefully all of you will do the homework.
Annamaria Franz, what are you going to talk to us about? Use Catas representative working on specific issues, including life cycle assessment. Yes, I've been working with Catas for about 20 years now, and over these 20 years, I've always been dealing with certification programs, tests for finished products. You know that Catas is a laboratory with different departments. So chemical analysis or testing, fire testing, but the beating heart is mechanical strength and durability tests for furniture products. And in this department, I work on quality control for our equipment, and I also follow the whole sales process of our equipment, because this equipment for testing chairs, furniture, is also sold by Catas to other testing laboratories. And the last piece of activity that I worked. I was born as a mathematician, so I like Dr. Bortoluzzi, that I've known for many years, and has always been stimulating me in terms of taking up new challenges. You've seen how competent she is. She's able to pick up enthusiasm, and yeah, it's this issue of life cycle assessment. So together with other two people at Catas, I've been working, and I've been taking education programs, and I also work in the area now of environmental impact calculation for furniture. It's interesting, challenging, but interesting because it's a measure, so it's something that yields measures, numbers. It's not just talking about greenwashing here, like a doctor before mentioned. So it's a methodology quantifying the environmental impact of products throughout the life cycle of the product. And so this is the first step is knowing the eco profile of a product. So once we know the environmental impact profile of a product, the company, the manufacturer, which is always full of ideas, improvements, product improvements, they can also evaluate how these improvements and new technology will impact on the environmental profile of their products. And as a last step, the manufacturer can communicate to the world what we call EPD, so Environmental Product Declaration, so they can use this tool to communicate their environmental performance. Catas does all this in terms of following the manufacturer, so measurement of life cycle environmental impact, and the declaration, impact declaration for furniture companies. I'm going to show you in a few minutes how an LCA study is designed. So it's not very easy, but it's not so difficult to understand. On the one hand, you need an LCA practitioner, so for instance Catas, who knows the software, the methodology, and can support the company. But on the other hand, the company also has to work on it. They have to look within the company itself for a number of data, information, with the help of their vendors, suppliers, in order to identify and the support that a machinery manufacturer can give, so in terms of woodworking machines, can be fundamental. So the 4 steps of an LCA study are setting a goal, identifying the inventory, the outcome of analysis, so environmental impact and their assessments, and interpretation of results. The first step or phase, setting a goal, is simple but fundamental, because it's here when we define why we are conducting the study. Our goal determines the methodology that we are going to apply, and some some differences, variances that to be applied during the study. We will do comparative studies, because a company may want to know what's the advantage, a competitive advantage of introducing a new product, a new material, a new machine, or we can conduct studies that are useful for the declaration, for the certification, and for the EPD. And based on the goal, we identify what we call the functional unit, the minimum product unit for which we do calculations, which is called functional, because it has to represent a function, the function played by the product. So we'll never study, we'll never conduct an LCA study for 1 kilogram of chair, because depending on the material used, 1 kilogram means nothing. We need to work on the function of the chair, so to sit down in a given environment for a certain length of time. So in this way we compare different products and different technologies. At the same time, we define the boundaries of the system, because a study, we've seen how the study actually applies to the whole product life cycle, which is subdivided into 3 moments or phases. Upstream, so material extraction, so from nature, so minerals, oil, that is then transformed into materials, semi-finished products and components that go through the manufacturer's gates. From here, it's the core processes, everything that happens inside the company, from materials processing, working and packaging, and then materials processing is followed by the moment when products leave the company, go through the gates, and then there's until the end of life. Something we need to define upfront is allocation procedures, which means on the production line, so typically you don't manufacture just one product, but a number of different products. So all the consumptions and the impacts of that production line must be allocated to the individual product we are studying, with different methods, of course. And once we've defined all this, we move on to the inventory. And when we talk about inventory, is where the company has to really look for the inventories, so purchasing department, logistics, production manager, sales, so all corporate functions are involved, because we need to count or keep the data about everything, which is the raw materials used, how they get to the company, how they are retrieved, what processing is done up front, packaging, transportation, energy consumption inside the company throughout the different working processes, emissions to the air, water, waste, scraps. So we really evaluate all the processing phases. Then we move on to logistics for distribution. We develop scenarios about what the end use can be, potential maintenance required, and end of life, where the product is distributed, in which countries. So it's a very thorough analysis where it is fundamental to have data, what we call primary data, real life data, taken from the real company situation, because this data then entered into a software that will calculate the impacts. So in some cases, the company does have data available, typically for what the company governs, so the core phase. For many, on the other hand, we need to ask vendors, suppliers for a lot of other information, or use the so-called databases, data banks that have already been populated by studies conducted by other companies, by universities, research centers. The problem of retrieving all of this data from data banks is that it's usually average data, mean data, taken from different countries, like the average mean of energy consumption, the European energy mean or average of energy consumption. So this leads us to overestimate the environmental impact versus what the real environmental impact could be of our production plant in Italy, where the machine maybe has already been used to pull down consumption, to consume little energy. So here, really, the machine manufacturer can contribute a lot to the user in terms of providing accurate data, especially when we're talking about Italian machine manufacturers, more than what we find in data banks. Once we've entered all this data into the software, we do obtain a so-called impact assessment, which is defined by categories of impact, and the categories are the same as Dr. Bortoluzzi illustrated earlier. So environmental problems that we all hear about on the news every evening. So we're talking about, we have three here, just as examples: so global warming, energy demand, water consumption, but we can talk about eutrophication of the sea, soil acidification. So all environmental problems we are aware of nowadays are taken into consideration. And for each one of these problems, we have defined a unit of measurement to relate the individual environmental impact of an individual product or processing method. This is the power, really, of this tool, that is able to quantify, in terms of environmental problem, the impact of one product. Typically, we obtain charts. These are simplified charts. Just an example. This is a hypothetical MDF panel, and the impact on the three categories we were talking about earlier: global warming, energy demand, water consumption. So here you see that it's possible to obtain numbers, data in terms of number, absolute numbers, but also the different environmental impacts are also visualized here in a chart. So out of 100 in terms of environmental impact, we can see which phase is the one that actually contributes the most to that single environmental problem. That's where we then move on to the eco-design phase, because this is where we understand where it makes sense to focus our efforts in order to improve the environmental performances of our product. This is, again, the last phase, data or results interpretation. So for each individual environmental problem that the company, the manufacturer, wants to focus on, we can work together with the company and think and try to understand where the impact comes from, and so at the same time try to improve the impact. Of course, to work well during this phase, of course, I have to have been working very well when doing the inventory, so in terms of very accurate data collection. To close off, the message, the takeaway message here today is for machine manufacturers. They really can contribute to these studies in two different ways. So on the one hand, they could evaluate the environmental impact of the machine itself. So considering the machine itself as a product, so we can analyze the machine life cycle. On the other hand, the machine manufacturer can also give a great contribution to who uses the machine, so by providing a number of information that the machine user can enter into its own calculation of its own life cycle assessment. So a furniture, a cabinet door, a chair, whatever, so that we can actually quantify the environmental impact by categories of impact. So this was the takeaway message that I wanted to leave you with. So Catas, that has always been a partner in terms of safety and durability of product sustainability. So you're all invited to contact us when you will decide to know more about the topic and maybe launch a pilot testing project. No more to say. Thank you, Annamaria. I want to grab the opportunity here because together with Catas, we have a long-standing relationship with Catas that actually ended up in a number of webinars that were launched pre-COVID. And actually, during the COVID era, we used webinars a lot, and we address these topics too. We cannot talk about these issues and then forget that machines are actually part of some value determination that has to be assessed and measured. Maybe I'm risking my own wage here, but I don't think, and I'm saying it out loud, here where we have 280 exhibitors, I don't think that the word of machine manufacturing has taken this message yet. I mean, they're still not aware of this, in my opinion. And how can we have them understand that this is something they have to deal with? Because either they start now and it's going to be easy, a smooth journey, but otherwise one day they will be forced to do it. And and they should provide more, a greater contribution to the clients in terms of providing data and information to be to go down this virtuous path. So back to the initial what I said at the beginning, we need to grow culturally here on these issues, because we do see that a lot of declarations about sustainability, being green, are all mostly based on perceptions, but not on real studies. And so probably that we need to grow and mature the whole world of production. But I hope that whoever is producing a cabinet door will need data at one point, and that's when you start to trigger a mechanism, and so whoever manufactures machines is going to start to think about it, and maybe they can contact us to develop these concepts. I say that sustainability must always start from within, from the heart. It's something that you own first, everything else comes as a consequence. As long as it is something that stays on the surface, that is considered by marketing, how to sell things, then everything is harder. I hope in the heart of people. So besides the heart, we'll have to do some other webinar in the future and go back to this topic, maybe also involve technology producers. We're going to have them sit down around a table. We're going to send out a memo to everybody, and we're going to get them all sitting down around one table to talk about this issue. So then let's see what happens. Very well. Unless you have anything else to add, if there are no questions, please, Luca. a very well-known journalist from this field. So 4 days of fairgrounds, 3 fairs, 1,000 exhibitors, 150,000 coffees, and I don't know how many wooden pallets, replacing crystalline polystyrol pallets. This is the defect of SUP, single-use plastic. So the ban on single-use plastic. There's no life cycle assessment at the basis of this ban on SUP. But is this, are we suffering from some emotional decision here? I'm not going to answer the question. So Dr. Bortoluzzi worked a lot on kitchenware and plastic packaging. Unfortunately, you're right, yes. Well, yeah, you hit the mark here because, and actually we don't deal with this issue, but that's the focal point. So you don't have to take decisions or based on emotions, but it has to be measured. I mean, your decisions must be based on numbers. Lord Kelvin measured it. So this, I mean, talking about plastic coffee spoons, I mean, yeah, we should study well what is less impactful for the environment. An LCA study would work for it. We need the mic, sorry. Well, 30 from the Balkans, 70 from China, when we talk about coffee spoons. China, I mean, is resistant to any kind of environmental consideration. They are made of beech, and most of it comes from Italy. I think we do have the machines, we do have the wood. I mean, there is a directive. Back to this point, I would be very happy if tomorrow, maybe we won't see it tomorrow, maybe our grandchildren, I would like that everything we buy does have a number identifying the environmental impact. I mean, you buy a car, I would like to know, is a Fiat 500 more impactful than a Polo car, Volkswagen Polo car? I mean, that would be nice for all, I mean, including coffee spoons or sticks. I mean, whether it be plastic or wood or any other material, I mean, let's look at the environmental impact. That's my dream, getting to this point. It's like a sort of environmental and identity card for each and every product. At that point, we will have an answer to your questions, hopefully.
Si dice buongiorno.
Good morning. My name is Francesco Montagnier from Chronosystem Components. We do manufacture furniture components. And my question is for Catas specifically. So eco-sustainability or environmental sustainability. We talk about something, whether you like it or not, is already there within our companies, but we have to put things in the right order, systematize things. So I know you do this. I would like you to provide education so that companies start to put all the rules and regulations, laws in the right order, so they have the tools available to demonstrate they are able to make eco-sustainable products. Education, staff education for us. I'm always been keen on environmental issues ever since I was a child. And probably, and without probably, the first 14,001 ISO certified company in Veneto region ever. So Mr. Montagnier, your company, I mean, double compliments to you. Of course, you are Catas and you know about it. Well, actually, thank you. This could be the right conclusion for all of our talks here this morning. So enhance culture and awareness of these issues. That's the first step. We have to start from the heart, for sure, and that you are confirming it. Then we can systematize things, and then we can do all our measurements, assessments, certifications, but that's the end point. We have Dr. Petrazza here, who's in charge of education programs at Catas. So you have some work to do here. We need it. Thank you, Mrs. Franz. Thank you, Mr. Bulian, Director at Catas.